So, hi everyone, we have Pawan with us today. Pawan was a software engineer at Postman, one of the first members at Postman. He built his own graph database at dgraph and right now is a member of technical staff at Chronosphere. So, welcome Pawan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tushar. It's great to be here.
So, Pawan, we would like to start by knowing a bit about yourself. Like, what do you do right now?
My position is a member of technical staff, but that's like a engineer position, and it's more of like a senior software engineer staff, somewhere between that. And I'm working at Chronosphere, and Chronosphere is like a metrics platform, similar to Datadog or New Relic. So it's a competitor to that. And we are building our own metrics tracing and logging platform, and I'm working on one of the teams which builds solution for our enterprise customers.
So, where do you work from? Where the
I
company
work
based
from
out of?
So Chronosphere is based out of the US. That's where the headquarters are, and most of the engineering team is in the US. A bit of it is also in Europe because they hired a lot of like early Uber engineers, and these people were based in the US or in Lithuania. But I am based in Sydney, so I am one of the three employees that works from Australia. Yeah, and I work remotely from Australia.
One of the three employees who work from Australia or who work from Sydney.
Who work from Australia? I am the only employee who works from Sydney. The other two people are in Melbourne.
Okay, so it's a primarily remote company, or you have like most of the people working in headquarters, and then the rest of the people are working remote.
So at least for the engineering, most of it is remote. For other teams, for sales and marketing and HR, they like we do have hubs. Like there are three hubs. There's one in Seattle. There's one in New York. There's another one in San Francisco. And we have like access to different VWorks and stuff. So people go, and if they are in the same city, then they would go there. But I work remotely, and a lot of engineering is actually spread across the US. So even in the US, most of my team works remotely. They don't go into an office. They would go in like once a month, once every 3 months, but that's it.
Understood. So what do you prefer? Prefer working remote, or you prefer working in office, or do you prefer working remotely but in an office?
I think personally, because I've been working remote for a long time, I've been working for like US based companies from Australia for a long time. I do would like to have a bit of like office time if I could. Maybe like the ideal balance would be 1 day a week. That's what I feel like. I mean, if I can go in 1 day a week, I don't have that right now, but what I have is a lot of flexibility on my time. I can decide when to work. Most of my meetings happen in the morning. I'm free after 11 a.m. I don't have any meetings after 11. 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. is my time on like hacking, on figuring out different solutions, trying out different things. And I really enjoy that. I have flexibility on that. We do have offsites, like my company does team offsites every 6 months. So every 6 months, I fly to the US for a week, meet the rest of the team, and work with them. I think that's good. If I did not have that, then I think working remotely would be much harder.
Working remotely gives you a lot of focus time to code and to build, to hack stuff around. Nice. Pawan, we
Yeah.
would like to know about your journey, like how it all started. I know you are a civil engineer, but how did you
Yeah.
get into coding? How did it all start?
It's a lot of luck, I think, that I'm doing this. There was also a lot of like thinking involved, and I did obviously consciously choose it. But I think looking back at it, I can see destiny also has brought me here. So I went to IIT Delhi, did civil engineering with Tushar. We were in the same batch. And at that time, I knew that Tushar was one of the people who was doing coding. I think he was one of the two or three people in our batch who was interested in coding. Most of us were not. But then I realized that civil engineering is not for me. During the 4 years, I realized that's not for me. And I wanted to get into software because coming from civil, in civil, if you have to build something, it takes such a long time. You have to go through so many approvals, and building things it just doesn't feel easy. I mean, I'm not saying it's not required, it's important, but it doesn't feel easy. And then I was introduced to the world of software in which you could build something and ship it to the world in like 2 or 3 days. And that was like a completely very different experience. And I was like, I want to get into this. And at the end of my 4 years, I was even thinking of going to masters to the US because I thought that's the way to learn more about software and get like a formal education. I did have a admit in like a course which was about data analytics at Georgia Tech, and had almost decided I would go. But then at that point changed gears because a lot of friends were in India, and there was this whole startup scene that was booming up. A lot of new startups were coming up, building things. And I thought that, I mean, why waste or why spend 2 years going away when I can learn on the job? So that's when I started. I took a year off after going to, like after finishing my 1 year, I did some data structures, algorithm courses and stuff in that time. And then I got a job at a food delivery company called Tiny Owl in Mumbai. That's where I started learning. I did not know anything about building applications before that. I learned there, and then from then I have been lucky to get a lot of interesting challenges, and that's how I am where I am, and I can talk more about that as we go.
So, just how about what was your first pay at Tiny Owl, if you don't mind telling us? Annual
First
package.
pay, yeah, first pay was I think 8 lakhs per annum. I suppose that's what it was, somewhere around that.
And
Yeah,
this is just 8 years back. We are talking about 2015 and 14.
yeah, 15. Yeah,
15,
yeah,
9 years
that's
back.
yeah, 8 9 years back. Yeah,
And okay, so from Tiny Owl,
yeah,
you moved to Postman, and
yep,
you were one of the first few employees at Postman. So how did
yep.
that switch happen? And how was your experience at Postman? Because Postman is the poster boy child of India. Like it's one of those startups which people right now, aspire to be in,
Yep,
building
yep,
for the whole world from India.
yep. Yeah, so first, when I got to know about Postman, that Postman is from India, I was really surprised that Postman is a tech company from India, because we used to use Postman for our testing our API calls and stuff, but I didn't know they were based out of India. So after working at Tiny Owl for some time, I think Tiny Owl was facing some challenges with their business, and our growth had kind of stalled, and that like it was not as fun anymore as it was when I started working. So I started looking for different opportunities, and I got to know about Postman from a friend who was working at Nexus Ventures, and they had invested into Postman. So it was a mutual friend who told us, there's this very interesting company that is being built, and maybe you can look into it. And I was like, I know Postman, I've used it, but I didn't know it was from India. So then I started looking into it. I got excited that this is like a tech product being built from India, and at that point there were very few tech products. There are more products now. I think at that point most of the companies were operation companies which had like a tech front end. For example, Tiny Owl. I mean, the main business was food delivery, but they just had an app for doing it. So Postman was very different and very appealing at that time, and I applied to Postman, talked to the founders, did the interviews and stuff, was really looking forward to joining. And after that, after doing all the interviews, I actually did not get through the interviews because they were like, I mean, we really liked you, but we're not sure if you would be a good fit or something. But then, and we can talk more about this. I really wanted to join. I was not looking at any other company. I mean, a lot of people, when they apply to 4 companies and then pick the one. I think my strategy in life has been pick one and just give it all your best and see, and just get it. I think that's my strategy, and that's what I also did at Postman. And we can talk more about what I did, but yeah, that's how I
Yeah,
got to know
we
about
would love to
Postman.
know what you did. Like you didn't go through the interviews and then
Yeah, so I did go through the interviews. The interviews went well. I think they were quite happy, but I think the way they were, one of the people in the interview for some reason thought I might not be a good fit, and they kind of vetoed everyone out. That's what I got to know later. But then I basically drafted an email talking about why I want to join Postman and what are the reasons that I would be a good fit. So in that, I highlighted all my positives, how I had learned, how I did not know anything 1 year before, and from where I had come. And then I also drafted why Postman, like why did I want to work there, why it was special. So I think I still have that email, but it had like 15 different points, which kind of showed that why Postman was like the next big thing and why I wanted to work there. And I think that really resonated with the founders when they read it, and they were like, yeah, I think you are really passionate about it, we want to give you a chance, so let's do this. Let's like you can come and join us and you can see how you like it. And that's when I moved to Bangalore. But like the main takeaway is that I really wanted it, and I wanted to kind of show them that I really want it, and I'm going to go to like great lengths to make it work. and that really resonated with them.
What was your employee number at Postman?
I think it was number 11, I suppose,
Number
10 or
11.
11.
10
Yeah,
or 11. That's like a
yeah,
very, very early start. Did you report to founders?
yeah. Uh, I knew. I mean, it was like a very small office. It was, in fact, in a home, like one of the floors of a home, and they were like they had set up like desks in different rooms, and the founders used to work from there. And I did not report directly to founders because there was like a VP of engineering that we all reported to, but all the founders knew me, I knew them. It was, I mean, when I look back at it, it was a good time. And at that point, I did not realize that how much, like how fondly I look back at it. I think that's what happens in life. Sometimes you don't realize how lucky you are until later. So I think, but yeah, I was really lucky to have that opportunity to work with them and to get to know all of them, and to get to be part of that small journey in the beginning of Postman. Now it's a very big company, but it's I'm lucky I got that chance.
Okay. Do you hold equity right now of Postman? Because it's a
I
billion
do
dollar
not.
company right now. It's a
I
unicorn. You do
yeah.
not,
Unfortunately, I do not hold equity right now.
but you were offered
But yeah,
equity.
yeah. I was offered equity. Yeah,
Okay. So it's a unicorn right now. So did you
yeah.
know back then when you were offered equity that it will become a unicorn? And now when you look back, do you see some telltale signs that these are the telltale signs of a startup? Because early employees see those journey from a very close vantage point. So do you think that were there any telltale signs that you thought it would become a very big company, not if like a unicorn?
Yeah. Uh, at that point, I did not realize it would become such a big company. In fact, even the founders, they used to have this as their goalpost that maybe one day we could become a unicorn. And today it's a $5 billion company. So even I think they were not 100% sure this can happen, but they wanted it. It's like you want that dream house, but you don't know, you don't have a pathway of getting it. It's almost like that. But yeah, I think even they were not sure, and I was definitely not sure. But I think over the time, I have been able to see, or I have gotten better at understanding what are the signs of a company becoming like a unicorn. And I think there are a lot of things. One of the things is you can only say when they have had a product market fit. I think before that, it's hard to say. You can before that you're mostly betting on the founders, and in this case, the founders did not have any experience before building the company, so I don't think you could have bet on them. But the good thing was they had a product which was used by at least 1 million people, just the client side. So they did not have a server side component to it, but the client side application already had like 1 million monthly active users. So I think when you have that, when you have like a product market fit, when you know that you are across users and when people want to use you, and then I think you look at how fast is it growing, how fast is the user rate growing, how fast is the revenue growing of the company, who are the early people who are joining the company. If the early people are people who are good, who are exceptional, then that also reinforces that this can be a big company, because you need a good product. That's where the product market fit comes into the picture. You need good growth. You need the right people to build unicorns or like $10 billion companies. So I think these are the things I kind of look at even when I decide what to join today.
Understood. So a great early team, exceptional team,
Mm.
is one factor that can determine if you are a big company or not. Even if having a great team doesn't mean that you will have a great big company, but it's one of the factors for sure. And the other thing is product market fit, that you have built something that a lot of people use, and it's a big enough pain point that people will also pay for it. So this is what product market fit is for our viewers, because it might be a new term. Okay, so moving on to, like, from Postman, or where did you move next? Like what
I
what
moved
what
to
was so, like,
yeah,
you went to great lengths to get into Postman,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then you moved out of Postman. So it must
yeah,
be a very exciting opportunity that you move towards. So what
yeah.
was that opportunity that you moved towards?
So it was a very exciting opportunity. So what I had realized is that Postman, my role involved both working on back end and front end. And at that point, I was not too keen on working on the front end because I could not really understand the science behind it. And I'm not saying there's no science behind it, but I think I was really struggling to understand it at that point. And I was more like coming from that DS algo background. And I was like, backhand is the thing for me. I can reason about it. I can build correct systems. I don't need to hack around. So that was one thing I did not like about working at Postman. I think in retrospect, I should probably have given it more time, because I think if you spend more time on front end, you can make sense of it better, and all of that. But yeah, I got a very interesting back end opportunity to work at a company called Dgraph. So so this was an opportunity in which the founder Manish Jain, he had worked at Google. He'd worked at Google Mountain View. He had a very good background of like building graph systems, and he had formed this company to build this new graph database. And there were a lot of things which were very exciting about it. So it was being built in Go, and this we're talking about 2015-16. Today Go is a more famous backend language. At that point it was not. I was coming from the Node.js background without types, and I when I worked in Go, when I started looking at it, I could see that this seems like a more easy language to work with. It's got types, it's got concurrency, it's got some of the primitives of C++ and Java and all of that. So I was really I really wanted to explore it and learn about it. So Go was one reason, building a graph database which is distributed. So before that, I did not even understand distributed systems. Everything was just about like a single server. Database runs on a single server. Or, I mean, the only thing distributed I knew was that running multiple instances of a HTTP service. That's the only distributed I knew. So I did not know any stateful distributed systems. I only knew stateless, like HTTP servers. But here we had to build our own consensus algorithm, because when you're writing to a database that's distributed in which data is sharded, then you have to attain consensus, okay, like among majority of the nodes. So all of this really excited me, like understanding something. I mean, building was the next step. I think the first 6 months was just about understanding what we are building, because all of these things were new to me, and they were quite challenging also, but it was very fulfilling. I think every day was like I was learning something new, and that was my experience at Dgraph. I think I worked there for 4 years. Out of 4 years, most of my time I felt like every day I had to learn something new. I had to I had to upskill myself. I had to understand something new. So that's what I really excited. Like that is the exciting opportunity that came, which made me move from Postman.
What was the employee number again at Dgraph?
Oh, Dgraph employer number. Frankly, I think I was the first full-time employee. So they had. I mean, I'm not including the founder.
Oh,
There was there, but and then they had given out an offer to another person, but that person joined after me. So if you're talking about the joining, then I was, I think, employee number one. But yeah, I worked as a contractor from India. The founder was in Australia at that point. So again, like working remotely, and yeah.
okay. So you didn't see any risk while joining Dgraph as employee number one?
See, I was like a 25-year-old guy. Didn't have much expenses anyway. I was getting a better pay than I was getting at my previous role. The founder had worked at Google. They had funding. They had like seed funding. They could pay my salary for the next year or two. And that's all that I thought about. I didn't have like a very long term vision. I was like, I'm taking a bet on this guy because he's worked at Google Mountain View. He must be smart, and he's quite smart. And I get to learn. I get to like it's also my interest. I get to learn Go. I get to learn how to build a database. So these are the things I was thinking about. It was a risk, but at that point, it did not seem like a risk. It seemed like just like another adventure. I think that's how it seemed like.
So you moved to Australia because of Dgraph?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I started working in 2016 April, I think, at Dgraph. I worked remotely for 6 months, and then the founder, he was the one who said that you guys should come. Me and another guy, we should come to Australia and work from there. So at the end of 2016, he sponsored our work visas, and we came here, and yeah, that's when I moved.
I would like to know what were like in your journey till now, like till Dgraph, any key moments that you think played a very big part in your career, or any key decisions that you took that played a great part in your, like a significant part in your career right now, that the trajectory of your career changed after that key moment. So do you have any such key moments in your life?
Yeah, I think I remember, like, one thing I remember, I was talking to the founder of Postman, like back then. One of the things he said is that good developers gain happiness from building something that is used by users, and that is what that is what they get their kick from. Like that is what they get the and I think this thing I did not realize then, but I realized it every time, even till now. That is what gives me the kick. Like when I'm building something, I see it being used, and like that is what I kind of like optimize for. Even now, I think when I talk to my manager, I tell him that I want like a good feedback loop. If I'm building something, I want to see the results of it in like the next 2-3 months. I don't want to be in a project which would take a couple of years to build, and then I get to see the impact. So I think that kind of changed how I think about things. I think about the customer in mind when I'm building something, and all of that started from back then when I heard that, I mean, this is how good developers get their kick from. I think that's one journey or that's one conversation that still influences me today. Apart from that, I think working in Go and how Go as a language, I think that has really influenced me. How it's very simple, but still allows you to build like complex applications, and how it allows you to again like build something that's useful instead of kind of like spending time on figuring out a technology. Once you learn a technology well and it works, then you can just focus on building things which the customer wants, and that's where the main value comes out of. So I think those are a couple of big highlights I can think of. There must be more, but these are the ones I can think of right now.
If I'm a college student right now in college,
Hmm.
and both, like I'm in my fourth year, or I'm in my first year, what advice, like what language would you recommend for people to start learning?
See, in terms of language, uh, I think the way to take it is learn the language that most of the world builds in. And I personally am not a fan of JavaScript. I'm not a fan. If I have to work on it today, I would not feel great about it. But it is the most used language in the world. Works on the front end, works on the back end. It has the highest number of jobs. So I would say start with JavaScript, because no matter what you do, at some point you'll have to do some JavaScript, and it's good to have that experience. I don't work primarily in JavaScript, but every now and then I have to work on a project once a year which requires it. And it's the language of the web, it's the language of the backend, works on both cases. So I would say start with that. And there is ample material for learning JavaScript. Once you do that, then I would say also learn like a proper backend language, like something like C++ or Go, or even like Java, because that is what serious enterprise backend software is built in, these languages. And then I think you can go from there. I mean, nowadays, if you really want to understand backend, then you should learn Rust, because Rust teaches you about memory and all of those things. So I think what I would say is in your career, you would learn multiple languages, but don't get too blocked on choosing the right language right now. Pick the one which gives you the most amount of opportunities, and that is JavaScript. From there, move to the next language. As in, when you find a job, you move into backend, whatever language they're using. Don't be too hell bent on like, I want to work on this language. That's what I did. But I think that's not the right approach. Every language has pros and cons. I think what you have to get to is you have to get to a place where you can choose smartly. This is the language which is the right fit for this problem. It's not just about this is the best language and I want to use it for every case. So that's what I would say. Don't try to do that. But yeah, start with JavaScript, then pick up like a backend language. There are a lot of options.
And what would be the best way to learn JavaScript?
See, I think my strategy has been, and I would advise different things work for different people, but I would say that like you should read the theory, but you have to build things. You have to write code that builds actual software. It can be a simple software, it can be a calculator, it can be a very simple website, but build it end to end. And so I think nowadays there are a lot of like websites, like I think Free Code Camp is one of the websites which has like a full pathway. It will give you like a 6 month pathway, and you have to build different projects. You have to build like a website which has a calculator, which has like a price conversion thing and all of that. So follow any of these resources. There are free resources right now, but focus on building projects, not just reading the theory, because reading the theory is one thing, but until you build it, you don't know if you know anything. So that's what I would advise against. Don't go for a book and just read it and just spend 3 months on it. Build something every day. Write some code every day, and then go back to the theory. So I think theory should be when you get stuck, or you read the theory, but then you do build something. So that's my strategy, and there are multiple resources for doing that.
So our podcast is called Codekar because
Yeah.
we embody the philosophy that the best way to learn code is to build something. You want to start learning coding, have something that you want to build and build it, and you will learn along the way. That's a great advice that you start with JavaScript because you can build things much easily. you will find more opportunities in jobs, internships, and then you move on to a more specialized language like Java, C++, or Golang. If I'm starting from college, what framework should I learn? Like there are multiple frameworks, multiple languages. What framework
Yeah,
do you enjoy working in? Like if you go back like 10 years back in time,
yeah.
and what would you recommend people to work in?
See, for the frameworks, I think a lot of it is kind of language dependent. I can talk about a stack. I can talk about what stack is a good stack to get started. And then we can talk about some frameworks. In terms of frameworks, I have experience working on Ruby on Rails because in my first job, I worked on Ruby and I worked on Ruby on Rails as a framework. I think that's a good framework if you want to build something very quickly. Uh, it has a lot of like conventions that make it easier for you to build stuff. So I think that's a good one if you want to get started. If you're talking about the stack as such, I would say pick up like a simple SQL database, Postgres, MySQL, simple. Don't don't keep it too complex. You don't need to go for anything special. Have like a front end language like JavaScript, and I think JavaScript itself has multiple frameworks. I think the most popular right now is like React. That's what people kind of use for building a lot of their stuff, but that keeps on changing every year. So build whatever is like, pick whatever is like the latest thing. And why I say latest is because that's where all the developer effort is also focused, in the sense that more libraries are coming up and all of that. So your work would be easier. So again, I'm not an expert into front end, but that's my limited knowledge of front end. On the back end, if you're again using JavaScript, then pick up like whatever Node.js has, like in terms of like the most easy thing to do. I work on Go. Go is a language in which there are not a lot of frameworks, and it's not even encouraged for you to use a lot of like external packages because the standard library itself is very powerful. So again, it depends very much on the languages, but in my work in Go, I don't even use a lot of frameworks. I just depend on the standard library. And like if you don't have any functionality in the standard library, then we look into packages and stuff. But yeah, like I think it just depends on the language. For me, Go doesn't really have that. But yeah, I do have experience working on Ruby on Rails, and the frame like that framework is a really powerful framework, and that really helps you ship stuff very fast without getting bogged down in all the code that has to be repeated. So it really saves you time there.
Yeah. Ruby on Rails is like my first and last love for building stuff very quickly. Like, how's your day-to-day life look like right now at Chronosphere? Like, what is your day-to-day life, day-to-day routine?
Day-to-day routine starts at usually around 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning because I have to collaborate with people in the US. And when I'm when it's my morning 7, then it's already afternoon for them. So any meetings I have are between 7 to 10. So or 7:30 to 10. I don't have a lot of meetings. I think during a week I have maybe 10 hours of meetings. That's also the maximum. So that's it. Apart from that, rest of the day I have for like doing stuff. So I would be working on a project which usually goes on for like 2 3 months. We'll have like sprints. Sprint is 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks we would meet and decide what are the goals for the next sprint based on the project. I have my tickets, which usually take at least a day, sometimes even 3 4 days, depending on the complexity of the task. And my meetings happen in the morning. Anything I need to talk synchronously happens in the morning, and then I have the rest of the day to be able to work myself. I have full flexibility. If I want to work in the evening someday, if I want to take some time off in the day, I don't have to report to anyone. I can do it based on my comfort. So that's how it is. And I think most of my days spent in like a lot of my days spent in writing code or like doing experimentation and building stuff for our users.
So, what machine do you code on?
I have a MacBook. It's one of the M2 MacBooks, I think. MacBook Pro M2. That's what I use. Then I have a monitor along with it that I like to work on. So these are the two screens that I use. I'll have
So
all the
you
distracting.
use a monitor screen and a external monitor.
Yep, yep. I have my Slack open on my MacBook, and then all my work stuff is on my desktop. And that would usually be my code editor, terminal, and my browser for doing any quick searches and stuff. I think that's pretty much it. I have an external mouse and a keyboard because if you're using two screens, then, and I don't like the Mac keyboard. as such, I like my mechanical keyboard and a vertical mouse. So these are, I think, the four things that I use. And I have a webcam for taking my meetings.
So you have a ergonomic vertical mouse, a mechanical keyboard. You like the clicky clacky sound of what your keyboard makes.
Yeah, more than the sound, it's just the comfort. I feel more comfortable, like my fingers feel better when I'm using like a mechanical keyboard. The vertical mouse also really helps. And I think what I found is that it's important to have the right setup, which is comfortable for your body. Because if that's not the case, then you end up being in pain and then you can't do it longer. So I just want to make sure it's ergonomic. It's nothing fancy. I don't have two or three screens. One screen is enough for me, or just two screens, but it should be comfortable, right height for the eyes. And
Okay. So what ID do you use right now?
I use something called Goland, which is a special ID for Go, uh, which is very nice. I have used Vim in the past, but yeah, I think I prefer something with a UI which gives you all these features. And Goland is like, I think, one of the most popular IDs specifically built for Go. That's what I use.
So Goland is built by JetBrains.
Yeah,
So JetBrains builds the most amazing IDs for every language there is,
yeah,
but they are all paid, I think. They charge like
yeah,
$100 a year or something.
yeah. So we have a company subscription for the employees of the company. So I get it through the company. But yeah, I think they charge like $150 a year or something. And one of the good things about them is they have the plugin system. So even in Goland, if I want to work on JavaScript, there would be a plugin for JavaScript, and I can just install that, and that gives me everything. And yeah, I agree. I think JetBrains makes like some of the best IDEs. I've used them previously for Scala, for JavaScript, and I've always liked the experience.
Okay. So does it support GitHub Copilot or any AI suggestions?
So I think it does. I think they have their own JetBrains AI now that
Okay.
is there. But I have not been able to use it because of like, I think, privacy concerns. I think all of this, because it's like all the code is kind of closed source, so we need to make sure that everything is safe. So the company is still working on like a policy for what is allowed and what is not allowed. But yeah, they do have like a AI.
But do you use AI in your day-to-day developer life to build stuff, to understand stuff, and how do you
Yeah,
leverage AI?
yeah, I do use it. I think almost every day. I have been using ChatGPT more, but I'm also looking into Sonnet and yeah, I think that like I've just started looking into Sonnet as like one of the models that I want to work on, or I want to use. But even ChatGPT has been quite helpful. I think it's been quite helpful in me understanding code. For example, we use something called Prometheus query language because Chronosphere's query language is the same as Prometheus query language. So, and I like that's something I've been learning over time. And like if I want to understand a query, I would usually give it to ChatGPT. It can break down things for me, and I think I've been able to learn things faster by doing that. Or if I want to write boilerplate code for doing something, I want to write like say 100 lines of code in Go. I would give that to it, and I would just take what it has and then kind of iterate upon it. So it's been really helpful in all of those use cases.
Understood. Okay. So one feature or like one thing that you can't live without right now, like in your developer job.
One feature, I think at this point I am pretty much now used to even like using chat gpt for kind of like asking it things, and I think I use it every day, and if I could not use it, it would be like a bad experience for me. I think we've gotten to that point. Even the browser that I use, I think Goland, and how it makes it like super easy to navigate code, and all the keyboard shortcuts and everything, I think it makes my work super easy. So I think those are the two things that now I can think I would not I would want to have those when I'm working.
So what is your ideal environment for coding? Like where do you want to do you like closed spaces without any sound? Do you like open spaces? Do you like to work in like outside in a balcony and all? So what kind of space do you prefer?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think what I prefer is a mix. Sometimes I want to just be in my room and not have anyone else and just like spend some time. And other times I work in a co-working space where I have like a open desk. And so I think I need a bit of variety. If I'm just by myself working on something for too long, I get bored. So I need to see other people and have some distraction that helps me focus. So that's when I go to the co-working space sometimes, whereas other times I just prefer like being in my room. But I think my headphones are really important for me. I usually have like music playing on the headphones, some instrumental, some music that doesn't have lyrics. That really helps me focus. And then having a task that is like interesting and challenging enough that I want to work on. I think when that is also not there, then also I'm easily distracted. But when I know I have to build something, I have like a goal in mind, that really helps me focus. And then the space kind of helps me get there.
So, one thing that you are most proud of, like one accomplishment or one project.
A lot of projects like that. I think one project in one of my previous companies, what we built is that we were using a distributed Prometheus, Postgres. So we had multiple, like we had 120 nodes of Postgres, each node with like 64 gigs of RAM. So these are like bulky instances we're talking about, and we had to build a solution in which we were automatically moving data around in these Postgres instances. So Postgres by default is not distributed; it doesn't offer sharding or any of that. So we had to build our own solution because, as you can imagine, there was a lot of data growth. It was like an analytics company. They had like a lot of analytics data coming in, and we were exhausting the capacity that we had on these nodes, and we had to add new nodes and shift data to these new nodes. So we built our own kind of like system which was moving data from the old nodes to the new nodes and making sure all the nodes are properly utilized. So that project is something which is very complex, and I'm really proud of that.
So, any challenges that you faced like during your journey, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I think there have been different kind of challenges. I think there have been technical challenges when you're working on something very complex. I think you have to really kind of think through things, and you have to something that's used by a lot of users, customers. You have to be really careful. You have to learn how to kind of roll things out safely. I think that's one of the lessons I've learned, that how do you do things by using like configuration, controlling whatever you are deploying. How do you do it by using config, which can be changed at runtime and which can help you safely deploy. Then how when you're doing deployments, how do you have like a quick rollback strategy. I think that's like one of the things that I've learned. Whenever you're doing something, if something goes wrong, what is your plan of action? Because as developers, we think, it works on my machine, it works on staging, so it's going to work on production, but that doesn't happen always. So knowing, expecting things to go wrong and then having a plan for when they go wrong, I think that's one of the things I've learned and which has really helped. And then I think communication, like how do you kind of like communicate to people, especially if you're working remotely? How do you make sure that people have the information that like you should go ahead and communicate the information that needs to be communicated. And yeah, I mean, like, I think that makes it easy for people to trust you because they know that you're responsible, you are at the top of your things. People should not have to follow you on the things that you promised. If you promise something, it's okay if you're not able to achieve it. Sometimes that will happen, but you clearly communicate, these are the roadblocks I'm hitting, this is why it's taking time. You don't just like go away for like 5 days and then come back, I could not do it. I think that is just like that doesn't work. I think you have to communicate, you have to keep the conversation going, and you have to be okay to accept help also. I think it's not just about solving everything on your own. You should try to do that, you should give it a fair try, but at the end of the day, it's a company, there are goals, there are deadlines. So for doing that, you might have to take help. So yeah, I think communication with others, taking help, and yeah, I think these are some of the lessons that I've learned.
So, one thing that you love about your job.
I think what I love about my job is there are new challenges in every project that I work on. Every project has had like new challenges. I've had to learn something new, and I have the flexibility and the time. I don't. My manager is very good. They don't micromanage. We have goals for 2 weeks. We do have stand-ups, but I think it's not like I am like questioned every day, what did you achieve last day or something. They understand. Sometimes like things take 3 days. Sometimes things can be done in one day. So their expectations are reasonable, and they give me the freedom and the flexibility to solve the problems that need to be solved. And they also trust me in the solutions that I come up with. And that does not mean that they would not question. I think they would ask good questions about it, but they trust me. If I have come up with something, they like I have the chance to try it out. So I think just that flexibility, that trust, and the challenging problems is what I love.
What do you hate about your job?
What do I hate about my job? I think the fact that it's like fully remote, I would have preferred if I won't say I hate it, but I would have preferred if I could go into office once a week, get to meet my teammates and get to talk about all the non-work stuff. I think have like do a bit of chill with them. I think that's what I would have liked if that was also there. That's the thing that I wish that could be better. I think that's the thing that could be better. That's how I would say it. I don't hate it.
Any mistake that you have made along your career, like that you want to?
Lots of mistakes, I think. But I think that everyone will make. I think different times, different mistakes. It's like one of the things is it's important to be patient when you're going into a company. You know, you do all the homework of why you want to work for that company. Give it at least a couple of years, if not more. I mean, and then, or if you can give longer, give longer. Like maybe work at a good company for 5 years, 6 years, because as a company is growing, you would see different types of challenges, and I think that's like what makes the journey fruitful. If you could, like, you solve challenges at different levels and then you also grow as a person. It might be management skills, it might be like, it's not always technical skills, it might also be other skills that you have to learn, which are important if you want to do well in your career. So I think maybe just like having the patience and sticking with it when times are not that great, and kind of like yeah, like just sticking and kind of riding that through. I think that's one thing. Made a lot of technical mistakes also that we can go into. I've also rolled out things which have caused like big customer disruptions and stuff, and then learned how not to do that a lot. uh yeah, I think that's something you learn as you make the mistakes.
A lot of AI software developers are coming into picture now, like Devin and all.
Hmm.
So how do
Hmm.
you keep up with this in this age of AI? And our job anyway is a very rapidly changing.
Hmm.
So a rapidly changing job, and in the age of AI, how do you keep up? What are the strategies that you are following and or the people should follow?
Yeah, I think the way I see it is that AI is something that helps you do your job. I don't think we are getting to the place where anytime soon that AI can replace you or replace good developers, because you would have human oversight. Someone needs to go and verify that this thing is working as expected, and the changes that are being made are the changes that are required. And so you need to understand code, you need to understand it. I think someone who doesn't understand it can be replaced probably, but someone who understands it cannot be easily replaced. So I think that's how I see things. And I think the way I think about it is that it helps me work on my job, it helps me save time, it helps me with the boilerplate code. I don't need to write all of it, I can use it, I can fine tune it. So I think I use it as more of like a coding partner. If I had like a friend to bounce off ideas with, that's how I kind of use it. And yeah, I think, yeah, like there is no need to be afraid of it for now. And obviously you need to keep on learning, you need to keep on kind of like understanding things. I think we cannot depend on it to kind of do the understanding for us.
So software engineers are notorious for not paying for software. So is there
Mhm.
any software or an app on your phone or on your machine that you pay for?
Good question. I think I have paid in past for software by JetBrains personally when I did not, but I've also paid for VS Code, Sublime Text in the past. Right now, I don't think I pay for it because I'm like the company pays for it. But yeah, I don't think I pay for the software.
Any app
Yeah.
on your
Oh,
phone that you have
actually,
paid
I
for?
used to. So I did take a subscription of ChatGPT Plus. So that is what I did. Like even now, I think I pay for it. So I do pay for that.
Any app on the phone?
I paid for one of the mindfulness meditation apps, not for anything related to coding.
Yeah, I was just asking in general, not like coding related.
Yeah. No, I think I
Okay.
paid. I pay for the books that I buy, and then I pay for the meditation app. Headspace is the one I'm talking about. But yeah, I think those are the ones I pay for right now.
Okay. So you were talking about that your setup should be somewhat comfortable so that you can sit for longer.
Hmm.
So how do you take care of your health? Because software engineers have a very weak back. They sit for long hours. So how do you take care of health, and what one advice would you give to all the new coders who are starting the journey? How should they take care of their health?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for the new coders, what can happen is that you are working on a new interesting thing. That's what takes all your attention, and then you just like forget about your health. I would say that think about your health, because I think that will help you stay in the game longer. You have to, if you even if you enjoy it, I think you have to, if you want to keep on working on it for like a lot of years, then you have to take care of it. And the way I do it is that I am a bit of fitness freak. I've always been doing some exercises, something or the other. I go to a gym 3 days a week for like group training classes and work out different muscles. That's how I keep the muscles, because when we're sitting, we're not using a lot of our muscles. So I think going to the gym and focusing on like my back, my legs, my chest, all of that helps me kind of like work on those muscles. That's one way of doing it. And then even my setup, I make sure it's like a good ergonomic setup. I have a nice chair, a nice standing desk at my home that I usually use for like taking my meetings and stuff. And I also like to like just like stand up and like go out for a bit of a walk every like hour or so. So that's something that I've made a habit of. I think I like to walk, I like to move, because that's what I've learned, that you should, it's not just about sitting or standing. You have to change. I think if you can change every 30 minutes, good. If you cannot, change every hour. But don't just be in like one pose for like 8 hours a day. I think that's one advice I would give. Like keep on moving a bit, and if you can, then go to a gym or do some exercise, like some kind of strength training exercises. I think what I would recommend.
So variety is the spice of life. If you like, you want to change your working environment time to time, you have to change your sitting and standing desk thing from time to time, and you have to have enough challenging work to keep your mind and body both stimulated. Okay, so before we conclude, Pawan, any resources, books, or courses that you would recommend for our audience?
The book that I would recommend, it's more of like a distributed systems book. It might not be relevant to everyone right away, but I think as if you're working on backend, it would be really useful. It's called Designing Data Intensive Systems by Martin Kleppman. It's a very good book which talks about everything that you would encounter in a distributed system. Talk about distributed databases, transactions, all of those kind of things. I think that's a very good one. It's also like an industry famous book. Only if you're working on like more of the back end. I think apart from that, I would I think it's not a secret that a lot of people practice on lead code for getting their interviews and getting better at like data structures, algorithms. That's more for like getting a job. I think that's where it is. I think these are a couple of sources that I can think of, and then most of my learning has been at the job, like picking jobs which have been like challenging enough, and solving the problems there and kind of like working with them. So that's a strategy that has worked for me. But yeah, these are some things that I can think of.
Thanks, Pawan, for doing this. It was a wonderful 1 hour. I didn't know how the time elapsed. Anything else that you would like to share or talk about?
No, thanks Tushar for inviting me. I think it was a lot of fun to talk about all of these things. I think what I would say is software engineering in general is like a very privileged field to be in, because you have a lot of opportunities. You can build stuff which can be used by people all over the world, no matter where you're sitting. There is also a good financial outcome in terms of the jobs and in terms of what you can like the kind of money you can make from building stuff. So I think it's a very privileged field to be in, and it opens a lot of doors for you. So if you are interested, I would say that pursue it by doing it. And contrary to what you hear in the news that the jobs are reducing and all of that, I think there is ample opportunity if you're a good developer, and I don't see that coming down at any point anytime soon. So I would say that yeah, if you're interested, then pursue it like with interest, spend time on it, build stuff, learn stuff. I think it's going to pay back more than you put in it into the industry. That's what I would say.
Got it. How can people reach you if they want to reach you? They reach you on Twitter or LinkedIn?
Yeah, I am there on Twitter and LinkedIn both. I think those are good places to reach me. Yeah.
Thanks, Pawan. Thanks for your time. This was a fun experience.
Yeah,
And
same
have
here,
a
Tushar. I'm glad
yeah.
we could chat. Yeah, thank you.